take some pictures with Greg and I while we're up there with the good camera, please? Thank you. There.
Well, we'll have to write the.
May I refill the coffee? Please. Thank you, dear. Good morning, everyone. So we are going to get started here. I hear there is another batch of coffee on its way, so if you are in need of a refill or didn't get one to begin with, it should be there soon. Just help yourself. I should be able to see it from here. Welcome to Social Media Breakfast, Minneapolis, St. Paul. My name is Michael Roventine. I'm the director and co-run the organization. Jen Roventine back there, wave your hand. My lovely wife is the other co-director, and our team members are scattered about here. Raise your hand, team members. There you go. So, you have any questions about anything as we proceed here, please give any of us a shout. Hashtag for anything that you're posting today. I'd like to thank our annual and our in-kind sponsors, Luther Automobile Dealerships. Please give them a warm round of applause for their support. As well as our in-kind sponsor, Stanley's Northeast Barroom. They're our bacon sponsor, which is all the way in the back there, very delicious bacon. Skelly Video Productions, Molecule Marketing, Sterling Cross PR, Muddy Paws Cheesecake, New, the beautiful space you're in right now, and Make It MSP. Please, let's give them a round of applause. It is their support that helps us keep ticket prices low and continue to do what we do. So we thank them very much. If you'd like to be on this list, please, again, see myself or any of our team members. We are streaming right now. Oh, coffee's there. We're streaming right now. You can check our Twitter feed or Facebook for the appropriate links. And that's powered by Gabe over there, Skelly Video Productions. Show of hands, who's here for the first time? Wow, wonderful. Well, welcome. We hope you'll come back. We've been doing this particular thing, connecting people and ideas over coffee and bacon since 2008. And we do it every month. And you can go to our website, sign up for email updates, and see upcoming events. And we hope you come back and see us again sometime. A couple upcoming events to mention. Next, both of these are here in this space. Next month on the 25th, Paul DeBeddings, also known as MN Headhunter, is going to, we're still working on the title and stuff for that, but basically he's going to be talking about the job market right now and best ways to kind of spruce up all of your channels, your LinkedIn, things like that, whether you are comfortable in your position, looking to change your position, and give his thoughts kind of on the local job market right now, kind of across the spectrum. So it's always interesting to have him speak, and people really get a lot out of it. So check that out. We'll have registration soon. And then August 22nd, we'll have a selection of social media case studies from local agencies, brands, companies of that sort. All right. So we're going to bring up, where is it? There he is. We're going to bring up Greg Swan. Greg is Director of Digital, Social, and PR at Fallon, but so much more. Come, you can come. Let's give Greg a warm round of applause, please. Is it on? It's on? Okay. So.
Thanks for having me.
There
we go. We're good?
Yes, we're good.
Awesome.
Okay. Greg has been here on our stage, as in here, for a number of times over the last decade or so. We were just talking about how a year ago yesterday, right? It was 10-year anniversary of, I think it was the 16th social media breakfast, and it was outside on the lawn, outside Deluxe headquarters, and there were about 400 people, chairs just like this spread out on the lawn, and they had rented a Jumbotron for us to use as our screen for the presenters. It was wild, So
10 years later, here we are. So we can just get another round of applause for Michael and the team that puts this on. It's phenomenal. This community matters so much. If you go back 10 years and you look at the people, how many of you were there? Any of you there 10 years ago? So this organization has been meeting for how many years?
Well, since 2008, so 11.
11 years.
Yeah.
And back then we didn't know if social media could be a career. And you had executives that thought it was a toy.
Yeah.
And you had companies like Target that blocked it while you're at work, and they still do. So it's just fascinating that here we are, and we get the opportunity today to think about how digital and social impact our jobs and our career and people. And I'm honored. I think that's really cool.
Well, thank you for being a part of this and for continuing to come back. Greg is one of our most requested and asked about speakers throughout the years, and he always has fascinating things to say, which is part of the reason we decided this format made more sense to just sit down and kind of pick his brain and hear the types of things that he's been working on. We're going to get to, I'm going to talk about your speaking in a minute, but first, let's talk a little bit about the emerging tech trends that you've seen lately and the things that are most fascinating you.
So it's 2019, which means that smartphones are mainstream. And we talked about that a lot for a while, of like how many people in the world have smartphones, when will we hit this adoption cycle where people have access to the anytime web on their phones? And it's now, which is very exciting. Thanks to Elon Musk, there are satellites circling the globe that are increasingly giving that access to rural communities, which matter, unreachable people who haven't had that access. But what's happening is, especially outside of the United States, is they're getting access to that technology. They're actually skipping over some of what we did with our beepers and our smartphones and and they're going straight to the web and increasingly to Facebook. And Facebook is the internet to a large part of the world. So even though you and I might not love Facebook right now, Facebook is very, very, very important from an emerging social network perspective, even if it's not new. There are things like augmented reality and geolocation that I would love to talk about. One of the things that I think is very exciting for what we do is moving beyond toys. So if you open Google on your phone right now and you search for the word horse, you can push a button that says see it in 3D, and you can project an augmented reality horse right here next to me. And that's not using any sort of special data or app or permissions. It just works natively in your browser. Holograms are increasingly here. So one of the things that we're doing at Fallon is thinking about how we're building 3D models for our clients. So we're really good at making sure that we have images and videos for our brands. Do you have a 3D model of your service or product that you can put into your content, put into search engines, which is really interesting.
What about, we had talked about TikTok ads a little bit in our early conversation.
How many of you are on TikTok? Yes. Okay, so you are the early adopters. And those of you who aren't, you've heard of TikTok, I'm sure. The most important Chinese-owned social media network. And I look at it when we think back 10 years ago. And so, as a level set, Facebook is 15 years old today. Twitter is 14. Instagram is 7 or 8. And Snapchat is 6. So these are not new and emerging mediums. These are legacy marketing channels that brands spend millions of dollars a year to reach their customers and their audiences using laser-targeted media buys. And you can bemoan the fact that Google and Facebook are the two primary monopoly holders of that data and how to reach people. But today, that's how you reach people. So awesome. And we joined Facebook and Twitter very early on, and we were very excited about those new channels and pushing them and figuring out how they're going to work. Then we joined Vine, and we think about like Vine and like how, oh my gosh, you have content and it loops over and over again, and it gets better every loop. And then Vine went away. And I think that what that did was it taught us that maybe that was a bad use of our time. Maybe I should have waited to see if Vine was going to catch on. But the truth is, the idea of looping content is now standard in social media, right? So on Instagram, what's it called? Boomerang. Exactly. So Vine introduced a theory of content, a behavior of how we share and consume content in a way that is now standard across other platforms. So Vine was around for 4 years. And whether or not you made Vines, you probably saw
14-year-old still quotes Vines all the time. Dad, didn't you see that Vine? It's, you know.
You're like, because it lives on through YouTube.
Yeah.
So TikTok is more important than Vine and Tumblr when it comes to shaping consumer behavior and how memes are spread.
Before we get too further, just for how many people know what TikTok is? Okay, so
it's a video-based, vertical-first social network. They acquired Musical.ly, and their biggest audience are teens and young people who shape how culture works and fashion and everything else like that. So one of the things about TikTok is when you sign up, you immediately get content. You don't have to follow anyone. It's not like Facebook and Twitter where you have to have friends or you have to know what you're doing. It just starts to serve you content, and as you interact, the algorithm changes and gives you content. When I watch a video that I think is very clever, I can push a button and remix it, and I can grab that audio and make my own. Make my own video using audio, which is a really interesting consumer behavior that I can't do. I can't grab Michael's last Facebook video and then remix it with my own audio and my own video set to his voice being funny, right? Not yet. So if you go to gregswan.net, I have a post up that I put up yesterday of how to get started on TikTok, because I think one of the things that we struggle with, especially in marketing, is this idea of permanency. And so if I spend time learning TikTok and then it goes away, will that have been a waste? And I'm going to tell you, no, it will not be a waste. Let's spend time understanding how content is shared and how young people are remixing things, and then go and follow Fenty Beauty, follow Red Bull, and follow the Washington Post, and look at how brands and publishers are already there. They're already making content in the same way that we were helping our brands be early on MySpace and Facebook and Twitter. So if you're not on TikTok, you're late. And you don't have to make silly viral content and share it with your friends. You can be a lurker. A lot of us lurk on Twitter, right? You have to be on Twitter to be relevant in 2019, because whether you like it or not, our president is on Twitter. And so you have to be on TikTok, because whether or not you like some of the cheesy memes or challenges that are happening, this is how young people are sharing content. So from a brand perspective, my recommendation is not jump in and make a bunch of content. We learned long ago that a lot of that effort of being first and creating organic content has a very small level of ROI, right? So if you have a 1% innovation budget to just play, then I recommend that your brand experiment with TikTok. I recommend that 100% of brands register your name on TikTok. So in the same way that a lot of us forgot to register our brands on Snapchat and then had to pay people to get our accounts back, we don't want to get into that situation with TikTok.
What about Fortnite? Same deal?
Any Fortnite players in the room? Anyone have kids or young people in your life who play Fortnite? Yes. So Fortnite is a massive multi-player game that you can play on your phone or on gaming systems that is highly social. In fact, it's emerging as the third place. So for me, I have work, and I have home, and I have the coffee shop by my house. That is my third place. That's where I hang out. That's where my network is. That's where I spend time. For my son, and for millions of people, Fortnite is becoming the third place. They have school, they have home, and they have Fortnite. That's where their friends are, and that's where they go to hang out. So I have a friend who recently moved to London, and he brought his family with him, and his kids are American, having kind of a hard time adjusting to UK schools and making friends. Making friends is hard anywhere, especially if you're not from there, right? And the kids aren't that nice to him in person, but they'll play him in Fortnite. And so the dad says, well, let's get some of your friends together and they can all bring their systems over to our house and you can all play Fortnite together. And the kids the reason they're laughing, they're like, Dad, it doesn't work that way. They all need to be at their own houses, on their own systems, and then we can play together. I'd rather just be in my room with a headset on. It's kind of sad, but also, I spent an hour and a half on Twitter just bullshitting last night. That's where the third place is. And so whether or not you're excited about killing people on the internet anonymously, I encourage you to download Fortnite. You can download it on your iPhone. It's like 1.5 GB, so you're going to want to be on Wi-Fi.
Don't do it this morning. We'll go down.
But download Fortnite. This is homework, right? Download TikTok. If you go to gregswan.net, I have a whole thing of like who to follow and hashtags to follow and that sort of thing. The Mario Kart challenge is amazing. Download Fortnite and experiment with trying to kill anonymous people on the internet. Because whether or not you like that, and we don't actually let our kids play first-person shooters for a reason, but I'm curious because millions of people are, and I want to understand how that works. And especially, so there is advertising coming to TikTok, and if you have been on TikTok lately, you're starting to see a lot of app download ads and that sort of thing. We're seeing with our clients that we have a significant amount of Snapchat ads that perform very, very well. So even though we can say that Snapchat isn't the hottest social network right now, from a performance perspective, they actually perform really well. I posit that TikTok will also perform very well, especially if you have an internet service or an app or something that you can sell online. I think it's going to be really powerful. Fortnite advertising is not yet a thing. However, if you look at the popularity of Twitch, which more people watch gaming on Twitch than watch NFL games, and definitely like the World Series, right? So let's look at this consumer behavior where people like to watch other people play video games, and maybe that's not you, but other people do. So you have to suspend that doubt and that criticism that you have in your brain, and then we as students have to study that and say, okay, so if lots of people are watching other people play video games, and Twitch is now one of the most profitable social networks, then Fortnite and Minecraft, as the two most popular games in the world, don't yet have advertising, but I bet they will.
Yeah. Well, and I have a friend who does makeup tutorials on Twitch, like cosplay makeup tutorials and stuff. So, yeah, Twitch is really
So you
coming
put the
along.
makeup on?
She puts the makeup on. You watch her put the makeup on. Yeah. So it's the same thing as watching somebody play a game, but you know, and she talks to people as she's doing it.
Putting makeup on.
No. Anyway, confessionals. Well, what you mentioned Snapchat. Demystify for those of us, me, who are confused about advertising on Snapchat.
Snapchat is the first social network that came out that has a chronological feed, which is how we tell stories. When I tell you about my vacation last week, I start at the beginning and I end at the end. But when I go onto Facebook or Twitter, I see what happened right now, and then it goes backwards. So Snapchat, from a very early moment, gave us that idea that wow, you could tell a story, or you could share content in a chronological feed, and we see that now with Instagram stories, right? And so again, maybe you're not on Snapchat, but you're seeing that story format move to Instagram, and now they're cross-syndicated to Facebook stories, which is not working out so well. So that idea of telling a story in chronological feed, as well as it's the only social network that opens on a camera first. It doesn't open on what your friends are doing. It opens on you sharing content first. Which again, that's an interesting behavior. It's teaching me to share first, then consume, not consume and lurk, and then maybe share and then get shit on by my friends, right? So, as Snapchat has tried to monetize, and going public is like the worst thing that ever happens to these social networks. Like you see this pressure to be profitable, and they start having to force ads in ways that you didn't expect. And so, on the advertising side, we had to learn how to tell a story in 6 seconds. And our chief creative officer at Fallon did an interview with the New York Times about the rise of 6-second vertical ads. And the question was, well, how will brands learn how to tell a story that's not horizontal in 30 seconds, in vertical in 6? And he just was like, I don't see how that's a question. Like, it's just a different format, and we will adjust to the parameters, because creative people love boundaries, right? So give me a set firm boundary, and then I will innovate within that boundary. So now I have just my phone, and I can now take over the whole landscape of that phone with content. And so we see this, like when you post on Instagram and Facebook, You want to be sure to post, like on Facebook, you want to post a 4x5 photo, not a landscape photo, not a 1x1. You want a 4x5 photo because in your feed it will take up the whole screen, right? So with a story ad on Snapchat and on Instagram, you get 9x16, you get the whole thing. And there's nothing more visceral than holding a phone in your hand and consuming content. So Facebook did a study, Ann Mack from Facebook, Consumer Insights, released this information at South by Southwest 2 years ago, where they studied how humans interact with content, whether it's like on a screen like this, which you have a higher cognitive load because you have distractions, like what's going on outside of that window, like is there more coffee, like what's the streaming guy doing, versus when you hold something in your hand, your vision actually changes, where you're laser focused in on just on your phone, right? And so you have a higher emotional connection to that content, which is amazing, right? And your fingerprints are literally on this device. Like, it could not be more intimate. So now we are making content, whether it's organic stories or ads, that take up that whole screen within your hand, and we get to sell you something, or make you think something, or feel something, or believe something, or share something. And I'm excited about that. And I think that ads are interruptive, and we all hate them, and advertising ruins everything. And we have to do our job, which is sell things in a way where we're not being terrible, where we're not polluting the world with garbage content. And so as I think about Snapchat has reached a place where it's probably peaked from an adoption perspective, and they've basically become Facebook's R&D at this point. Like, they're just going to continue innovating new ways of behavior, and Facebook's going to copy it. However, Snapchat also has the word chat in its name. And from the beginning, we've viewed it as a chat app. So there's streaks, right? So like, you and I can have a streak, and I try to keep it up, and we share content back and forth. And I personally think that's stupid and a waste of time, but people do that. So we want to study, well, why do they do that?
Again, my kids are obsessed with their keeping their streaks going. Yeah. The 17-year-old and the 14-year-old. And same thing, I think that's ridiculous. But then what are we doing? We're checking in on Swarm everywhere. And they think that's why are you doing that? Why are you telling people where you are? So it's just another gamification.
Yeah, it brings me pleasure in a way that maybe you don't get, but screw you, because I like it. So again, like, we have to suspend that. So it's a chat app. Yesterday, Snapchat launched new research called the Friendship Report. And you can Google it, or I have it on my blog. And so it's research into the state of modern friendships, and specifically through Generation Z, and how Generation Z views friendship through a screen first, versus through interpersonal and then a screen. So again, your question is like, what about Snapchat? And so what I'm trying to explain is like how important Snapchat is, even if it's not the most profitable, even if Facebook is eating its lunch globally, and even if millennials, or older millennials into Gen X like me, are spending less and less time there, the idea of face filters and augmented reality holograms that you can project somewhere, and looping content, and personalization, and then friendship is fascinating. One of the other pieces of their research that came out this week talks about how younger people, Generation Z specifically, uses imagery and emojis to communicate emotion through text. So we've all had this experience where you're texting with a loved one, maybe, and maybe they take something the wrong way because you're just typing a text out, but you don't have that emotion in it, right? So the next generation is becoming quite adept at using emojis and photos, like I probably use a smiley face. They're using the whole breadth of content and how to communicate. So Snapchat is actually studying this behavior, which I just think is fascinating.
Absolutely. We touched on stories. You touched on stories a little bit. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, especially from a brand perspective. What is, in your experience and in your opinion, smart ways to get into the business of using stories for your brand, for your company?
That's great. So early social media days, it was free to register your brand, a Facebook and a Twitter and an Instagram account. And then now you bought a car, so you have to put gas in it, right? So we spent a lot of time making content and then seeing how it performed organically. And for a lot of us, myself included, like over-indexed on organic because it was fun and because you could earn attention. And with my PR background and my love of the challenge of earning attention, of understanding a community and a channel in a way that you can get an unreasonably unfair amount of attention, organic was really fun. With the algorithm age, right? So we sat here, 3-4 years ago, and we're like, the algorithm happened, and you have to pay if you want anyone to see your content. And we were angry about it for a while, and now that's just how it works, right? We have to pay. If you post things on Facebook or Instagram feed or Twitter, and you want anybody to see it, you pretty much need to pay for it. Which means that you're going to post different things now, because there's pressure on what that content is. So we represent Arby's. So Arby's is spending their paid dollars on driving things that drive you to the store. And they also have a lot of really great organic content, but maybe that doesn't have paid behind it because it's for the community, right? But the things that you're putting paid behind need to deliver ROI. So it's 2019, and Instagram Stories and the Stories format is an amazing proving ground for organic. And I don't know about you, but I tend to open Instagram and just hang out in Stories the whole time. Look at all these heads nodding, right? So we specifically break it down by Instagram feed and Instagram Stories in our content planning. And in the same way that we used to brainstorm and strategize about earning unreasonable attention in organic Facebook, Instagram feed, and Twitter, we're now thinking about that for Instagram Stories. Stories, again, they tell a chronological story. They disappear after 24 hours, which I think is really exciting. I think that puts a lot of pressure on you to tell a good story quickly, and it also means you need to go quick because it's just going to disappear. So you can't spend 6 figures making this content because it's going to be gone tomorrow. And then highlights, I think, are another really interesting thing. So if you view Instagram as the new showroom, or your Instagram profile is the new website, those highlighted stories where you can take stories and then archive them into little mini stories that live on your page. You can think about what those are going to be and how they represent you and your brand in a way that has a really interesting long tail, including driving clicks. So that's the other thing about stories with this whole swipe up to website that you don't get with Instagram feed. And increasingly the Facebook algorithm penalizes you if you're just posting link posts on Facebook. So if I can tell a really great story in Instagram Stories and you can swipe up and hit my website, that's like a triple win.
Well, especially now that you can interact more with stories and you can enter things and do polls, things like that. That's fantastic. All right, so let's move away from these areas that maybe not everybody's in to something that you set as a personal goal for yourself for this year. Is a technology that may surprise some people. Do you want to talk about that?
Who likes email? Raise your hand if you love email. I love email. It's really counterintuitive.
Only became an AA meeting in here.
So not on brand,
Greg.
It's not on brand. I love it. So I have a New Year's resolution this year, which was to learn email. Why?
Yeah. Why,
Greg?
Greg?
You want to learn email? Because email is the new social media. It's the new killer app for organic content. What?
You're I don't even
going to do both sides. Say what, Greg?
I'm just letting it land.
So it's what, 40 years old? Someone can correct me how old email is. What the world doesn't need is more emails. However, algorithms have changed everything. How you consume content, how our audiences get the content that we are sharing as a brand has completely changed. And I don't know, in Twitter in the top right corner, you can actually toggle on and off the algorithm for the fire hose. So you can set it to just see most recent. And you can literally see every single most recent tweet. And then you forget and you leave it on. And then later you're like, man, Twitter's boring as crap, right? And you go turn it back on. because the algorithm knows what you likes and it helps search through the garbage and give you the best stuff. And I think that's really interesting. Do you leave timeline on? No. And when it came on, it was like, yes, like screw that algorithm. The algorithm is actually doing a really good job of weeding out the crap.
Yeah.
Now let's say your brand is sending some of that crap. How do you make sure that people who want to follow you and get your content, which used to be a thing in social media, can now subscribe to your content and get it? It's email.
I still had sense of reference here.
I'm telling you. So what's really interesting about email is that lots of brands have email marketing lists where they just push out stuff, and they need you to open them and need you to click on it and to do something. But what we're seeing are brands increasingly starting to build newsletters that have the same types of content and interesting facts and things that you would want to share that we used to post in social media, but now through email. And what's really attractive from a brand perspective is that if you sign up for my email and you sign up and you sign up, and then I hit send, theoretically, it goes straight to your inbox. So I didn't have to pay extra. I had to pay Constant Contact or someone to distribute the email. I had to pay someone to design it and write it. But I didn't have to pay Facebook to make sure that you get the message I sent to you, which is very interesting. Now, there is a whole other side where you do have to get through the Gmail algorithm. You do have to make sure that you don't have enough people who aren't opening your email that you get flagged as spam. You do have to think about how those images are going to open on your grandma's BlackBerry, that sort of thing. But email is this really interesting space where I've spent the last 6 months learning about how it works, consumer behavior of when they'll open it and what they won't open, how subject lines work, if there's a call to action, how you evaluate the back end of what an open rate means versus dwell time, embedding polls and countdowns.
Wait. What's dwell time?
So how long you would spend in an email, reading an email. How much content you could put in where it gets cut off, what the difference between Microsoft Outlook versus Gmail versus iMail. I'm geeking out on this in the same way that I was geeking out on making content for Facebook and Twitter and websites. And I don't know, are there any email marketers here? Yes. So you're all just oh great, welcome to 2019, Greg. I have a lot to learn from you. And I hope that a lot of times when we're in meetings and we're we can put that in the email, and people are and it's it used to be we can tweet that out, and they're it's Twitter. But the difference is that they have 100 unread emails in their box versus it used to be they just weren't signed up for Twitter. So I highly encourage you to think about, if my brand was going to send an email that people wanted to open, what would that be? Could I repurpose content I already have for social and share that? Who would sign up for this? What do I want them to do? And then how often do I reach them? Email.
So this isn't just your obsession. You're applying this to clients. Tell us some of what this new focus on email has done for Arby's, for example.
Yeah, I can't share client specifics, but we're in thinking about some of the social media case studies or stunts that I've shared in this room. We think a lot about, so I don't just want you to see the PR article. I don't just want you to hear about it on NBC Nightly News or read about it on BuzzFeed. I want to get you to click on our website so that I can cookie you and retarget you with banner ads. I want you to hit the website so I can pull you through the funnel and sign up for my email. And it's really with the rise of digital marketing and specifically display advertising like banner ads, there was a lot of pressure on making sure that all of your marketing drove a click. And a lot of those display ads are served more as awareness. It's just they're like billboards. You don't like them, you don't want to see them. You can all install Crystal for $3 and it'll block all of them on your phone. But they serve a purpose, and there was a lot of pressure on did that drive a click? Did that drive a click? That public relations and social media is stunty stuff, or things that you would read about in the newspaper or share online didn't have that same pressure. And what we're seeing right now is combining those two things. Being able to do something in the world that results in you also wanting to visit a website, that results in you also wanting to hit an email. And to me, like if you go through that whole process, and so we call it connections planning, like how all the different channels function together and then pull through a common narrative. If you're not getting their email at the very end, you've lost because you had their attention for a split second. And we should talk about attention. But like you had their attention. And if you didn't get them into a place where you can get it again for the lowest possible investment, then you fail.
Okay, let's talk about attention then.
Okay.
So you talked about the attention economy, the current state of the attention economy, when we were discussing what we were going to cover, how that impacts organic creative. Would you like to expand on that?
So in that same Facebook study I mentioned earlier, they came out and said that the average consumer scrolls through 300 feet of content a day, which is as tall as the Statue of Liberty. And so it could be, it's cliche, we call it, like you have to come up with thumb-stopping content, right? So if mobile is mainstream, mobile is the primary screen, we design websites in a mobile-first perspective, we're making content that is mobile-first and retrofitting it to desktop. Mobile is where attention is. You have more emotion to your content. Facebook also showed that the average time it takes when you're scrolling for your brain to process what you're seeing and decide if it wants to stop or not is 0.25 seconds. So you have a fraction of a second to get someone's attention, and did they stop, did they pause, and then what did they do? And the younger you are, the faster you scroll. So stalk a young person and watch them scroll. It's bananas. And you're like, are you even looking at, like, can you even see what you're scrolling through? And they can't. Their brains they grew up looking at screens in a way that, like, I grew up looking at a monochrome green and black screen, right? It wasn't an endless scroll. And Mozilla has done studies on their invention of the endless scroll when you get to the bottom and more content comes up and what that's doing to us from a human perspective, which we should also talk about. So, the attention economy, which there's a great book by Tim Wu called The Attention Merchants that I highly recommend. And it talks about how we in this room, we are attention merchants. We day trade attention. And whatever's going on in social media this morning, whatever our president is saying about the debates last night, we're competing with that today. And that means that our competition is not our immediate category competitors. Our competition is literally Donald Trump. Our competition is whatever is happening in the media, whether it's global news with Iran, or it's the fact that Arby's released a merit, which is a carrot that is made of meat yesterday, which we did. So you have to think about, like, how are you going to compare, like, how are you going to compete within that? And so I pay a lot of attention to trending topics, not because I want to know what's trending, but like, I want to know what other people care about today. And maybe you don't care about that, but that doesn't matter, because that's what the masses care about. And then you bring that down into who your audience is and where that is. There's also a lot of pop psychology about the erosion of the attention span, right? So like we all have less attention than a goldfish, right? Like, I'm not selling things to a goldfish. I want to know how you guys think. And the interesting thing about that is that we, like in the research, it shows that we hit a peak of people who admit that they look at their phone the first thing when they wake up, and then they look at their phone as the last thing before they go to sleep. That is actually just standard now. I think it's like 8 out of 10, okay? It's not going up anymore, but it's also not going down, which is really exciting for marketers because that means that this attention cycle is stabilizing, which allows us to start to make conversations or make decisions. So again, it's like once you have those barriers of what the creative brief is and how people behave, then you can be creative. But when people keep changing their behaviors, it's harder to innovate and harder to be creative. So more people, there's a level amount of people now who are spending a ton of time on their phones, who are ignoring their kids, who are standing in line at the grocery store, and you're seeing gum sales plummet because people are in line, like at the gas station, and they're not picking up gum. Like these are real things that are impacting the economy, and so we have to pay attention to this. Speaking of, I just got a text. So I'm now using Yoshi for gas. So I'm off gas stations. And I'm doing Yoshi, it's like Uber for gas. So my car is getting filled with gas while it's parked over there right now. Right? So you can do this in Minneapolis, right? So that is, I don't even go to gas stations anymore because of technology and because of the lack of attention that I want to spend waiting in line. It's called Yoshi. I'll give you a referral code if you want. I'll get some cents off gas.
Where do you get your gum then?
That's the question.
I think that's a new opening for an industry. You Uber for gum.
I used to say, people don't put gum on grocery lists, and then I'd hear like, no, I do. And I was like, okay.
Okay, so we were talking about the wonderful new applications of ancient technology like email. What are your thoughts on podcasts?
I wish that I had started a podcast 10 years ago, and I wish that I had started an email newsletter 10 years ago. And Gary Vaynerchuk has said the same thing. Like, he wishes that he had started email 10 years ago, because those connections, our network matters so much, right? Like, just from a human perspective and a work perspective. Podcasts are now two-thirds of Americans listen to a podcast in the last month. It's not fringe at all. Like, that's more mainstream than radio, probably. That's not true, but it's. I think podcasts are fantastic, and I think that the ability of, again, the always-on connection to the internet has changed podcasts in a way that when we're early days of social media, you have to download it on your computer and then plug your iPod in and sync it. And now I can just be like, hey, be sure to follow the Social Media Breakfast podcast.
We used to have instructions about how to get the podcast in the podcast, which I always thought was funny. Like,
well, some of the ads
paste this URL into iTunes.
Yeah, they'll still say like available on Audible, Stitcher, Spotify, and it's like available where podcasts are sold. And increasingly, I think we're seeing that come down. If you're interested in podcasts, you should start one. If you're interested in email, you should start one. Back to email, because email. So like I registered MailChimp and taught myself how to make emails in the same way that when I wanted to learn how to blog, I just registered a WordPress blog and then taught myself CSS. Like, it's not that hard, and you can pretty much Google to figure this stuff out.
Absolutely. This brings us to more types of screenless media and voice activated, voice interacted.
So how many of you have a voice-activated device in your home? And how many of you have a voice-activated device in your pocket or your lap? Right. And how many of you regularly use it? Okay. And how many of you don't even have it plugged in right now? Okay. Good. So 8% of Americans got a voice-activated device for the holidays this year. We're seeing the adoption rate of Amazon Echo devices and Google Home at a massive high, to the point where it just skipped right over that. If you're familiar with the Gartner's hype cycle, we went right over into the trough of disillusionment, where we now are questioning if it's spying on us or not. And that's exciting. We got there really fast. And I'm glad. I'm glad that we're having this discussion about these always-on microphones we put all through our houses right now, that it didn't take 5 more years. If you look at the Cambridge Analytica scandal and Facebook, how many years we gave these networks our data before there was some sort of reconciliation of what's happening with that. I think it's really good that there's pressure on Amazon right now for how they're using that content. However, this week there was a new patent that came out from Amazon that allows you to say Alexa after you have asked it to do something. So, set a timer for 20 minutes and turn on the kitchen lights, Alexa, and then it will do it. Now, you'll notice I'm trying not to say she, because I'm trying not to project gender on an assistant.
See,
I think
we
have some really big issues as a human race on that too. So, voice-activated devices are here. Also, Amy Webb, who's an amazing futurist, has done research with her team at New York University, NYU, on will the Google ecosystem and the Amazon ecosystem ever work together? Because I don't know about you, but I have a few different flavors of this stuff, right? And her team found that there's less than a 10% chance that'll ever happen. So no, it's not. From a brand perspective, what do we need to be doing to get ready for screenless devices and voice-activated interfaces? Well, a really interesting way to start is to create a flash skill, or flash briefing, within Amazon. So Alexa flash briefings are very easy skill to code. You can learn it in a weekend. You can pull from an RSS feed, which means you could pull it from like a blog you've already written. And when you, like in the morning, you would say like, Alexa, like give me my flash briefing or tell me what's new, and she will play whatever you have written in your blog. So we did this as a team. Every single Friday, I send an email to all the Fallon clients called Social Pulse, and it's like 5 to 6 things that are going on every week. You can sign up for it too. The link is in my bio on Twitter, bit.ly/Greg Swan email. So we send it every single week, and then we, as like an experiment, we practiced trading off rewriting it for Alexa, because I have a lot of experience writing for reading and writing for the eye, but writing for the ear is different. And you start to learn like how homophones work and how like different things that you might write or punctuation that you might write that come out differently when Alexa reads them. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting piece of homework that I can give you, is to like learn how to write for the ear when we're so schooled about writing for the eye. Also, brands that are, like we created a Alexa skill two years ago probably for a client that we had like a noise machine, and we had we pulled content from the TV spots that actually played on the Echo show that were just interesting in a piece of the content mix. Our Facebook post that said, download our Alexa skill, performed better. We had more people engage with those Facebook posts than actually downloaded the skill. And that's okay, because it was really more of a modernity play. More of a, let's just experiment and we'll be out there. But on the back end, if your brand has a database of customers, you should be thinking about how you can hook that to voice-activated devices in a way that I could say, Alexa, order me this, or check on this, in a really interesting way. So US Bank has a brand new app that they have done the work so that you can ask Siri what your bank account balance is. And there's so many little handoffs that have to happen in there from a data security perspective and where the handshakes happen, that it's a little kludgy, but it's early days, which I think is cool. I also think there's a ton of garbage skills, and like not just ask for a fart, which is my kid's favorite. But it's okay to make it your own skill. And in the same way that you can register a podcast or make your own email or start a new blog, you can make a skill. Like you can really do it in a weekend. It's really not that hard. And like I would encourage you, like, you know, you have a bunch of friends coming over this summer, like make a joke skill, like an inside joke skill. Just like practice with it. Because writing for the ear and understanding like the difference between an invocation and then an action in voice programming it's fun, and it's going to be here. I just got into the pre-beta order for, what's it called? Alexa Auto. So it aftermarket turns your car into an Alexa-enabled device, and it arrives on Friday, and I have no idea if it'll work on my car, and if it doesn't, I'm going to like tweet like who has this model of car, and we'll see if it works. But I'm excited, and I want to play with that. Now, the privacy side is like, is Amazon recording everything you're saying and listening and laughing? They're like, yes. They are. The privacy implications are dire, and I'm glad that there's starting to be some accountability. We have an Alexa device in every room of our home except our bedroom and bathroom, right? Like privacy is privacy, and you need to be careful what you're doing with that. We have an Echo show, we have a Google Home, and we have a Facebook portal all in our kitchen. And the Facebook portal is the one that I unplug and then I cover the camera on. Like, and why? Because arguably Microsoft and Google have done more egregious things with our privacy than Facebook. But because I'm aware of Facebook, I'll unplug it. So it's really early days for us understanding how that's going to work.
What was the latest total of Alexa devices in the bedroom? We just realized, because we have a bunch of old Kindles. Between the Kindles, we have an Alexa speaker, and our 2 Android phones, we just realized like everything we've said in the bedroom in the last 5 years is public record.
There's a thing called Zuckerberg's Law that was a thing 5 years ago, which is that you'll share more this year than you shared last year, and like the erosion of privacy is real. And there's a lot of people with a lot smarter than me have done a lot of writing on kind of where we sit as humans when we think about what is private and what is not. I think what's interesting, so like that's me, that's my Greg hat, but when I put on my brand marketer hat, like we have so much responsibility to our brands and to our customers to protect their data and not fuck it up. Like not make an egregious mistake, not be flippant with it to the point where you might actually neuter your program. You might actually like not do as cool of work because you're being careful with your customers' privacy. And like that's good, and we should validate that as a community, and we should support each other on that because everyone wants to see that new cool shit thing. But if like 6 months later it turns out that you violated all this privacy, it's super bad. Apple is one of the best about user privacy because they got in trouble like way early. Like who knew? Target's like data breach, like because of that they got all these amazing processes in place where like that should not happen again. But I saw this amazing keynote at South by Southwest with Malcolm Gladwell interviewing a couple of the executives from some of the autonomous driving car companies. And they were discussing the idea that these autonomous cars are scanning. They're not only just scanning like where the roads are and where the homes are, they're also picking up where the Wi-Fi signals are. They can tell, I saw this week that they can tell like where some like invasive species plants are. Like they have tons and tons of data on us, right? And so you've got these Google Map cars driving around picking up all this stuff. And then we talk about like a future where none of you had a parking issue today because you jumped out of your car and it drove itself back home and went and parked itself back in your garage, right? And so Gladwell is like pushing them, and he was like, but what happens when that system gets hacked and someone crashes 3,000 cars at a time and people die? And these car companies and these software companies are like, won't happen, not gonna happen. And Gladwell's push, and I wanna give him credit, is the NSA got hacked. Like, Snowden happened, like Target got hacked, like they will be hacked. People will die in autonomous cars. I'm excited, I can't wait to not drive here from Chaska every day. Oh my gosh, like I work down the street, it's a terrible commute. But I'm not naive that it's not gonna get hacked. Your audio data from your phone and in your home will be hacked. It will leak. And so we just need to decide as a species like how much we care about that privacy. And this is where like I have to check myself a little bit because like so I have the older grandparent who's always been like no and like damn these kids don't know what they're doing, and like I see this erosion of morals and privacy, and I'm just like, you're old, you don't know anything. But we can learn a lot from that generation too. Like they have a sense of like maybe things are going too fast, and I'm the one that wants to run fast. There's this amazing book called Team Human by Douglas Rushkoff. It's the second book I highly recommend, Team Human. Douglas Rushkoff is this fantastic futurist. And he's been talking about the next of the next of the next, and these DARPA robots that can run upstairs, and they're knocking them over with hockey sticks. And he's been talking a lot about us reclaiming our humanity through our devices. So technology is not evil, and it's not bad. In fact, like technology is what allows you, like us all to be here. Like Eventbrite and social media that like made us friends a decade ago, and and that's awesome. But also like when it becomes all about the technology, or we let the technology lead too much, that's where we get into trouble. So, still ranting about Amazon Alexa getting hacked a little bit. Like it's going to happen. Instead of us like having outcry, just be like, and that's why we made the right decision for our clients to protect our data.
Excellent. Before we open up to questions, I'm assuming there will be a number of questions. Tell us about Facebook Bitmojis and why we should be paying attention to that. Oh, two things. Sound on Instagram stories and Facebook Bitmojis.
Yeah, so Facebook and Instagram are now telling us like the preferred consumption habits for Instagram stories is now sound on. And I had this creative director's brain just explode. And just like, for 2 years you've been telling me to quit writing script-based things with sound, and like now you're telling me to put the sound back in. And I was like, yep, it's 2019. So what Facebook would say is like sound off by default and sound on for delight. So sound matters. How many of you have a Bitmoji? Yes, right? So Bitmoji was purchased by Snapchat, thank you. And now, what's Facebook doing? They're copying their R&D group, Snapchat. So Facebook is launching their own Bitmojis. And specifically what they're going to let you do is comment as your Bitmoji. So let's go back to that Snapchat friend report that you should skim around how Generation Z is learning how to communicate and to reduce friction in a text-based conversation by adding visual elements and emojis. Facebook is studying that really closely. And like Facebook, so I'm a member of a group on Facebook called Where We All Pretend to Be Baby Boomers. It's amazing. So in order to join, they ask you questions, but you have to answer them like a baby boomer on Facebook would. So it's just like, I just like post like a minion gif, or I'm just like, this person drives too fast in the left lane, right? Like it's all the things that we see happening on social, and I'm stereotyping a generation, so I apologize, but what Facebook is seeing is that with baby boomers as the most active and also toxic community on Facebook, specifically around neighborhood outrage and politics, they're adding this ability where like it can just be my mom with like a finger like this instead of my mom saying like, and that's why such and such, you know, or I shouldn't pick on my mom. And so is that going to fix the community problem? Nope. But as brands, we're going to start to have to community manage people's Bitmoji responses to our content because it's 2020.
So exciting. Tell us briefly about digital autobiographies, because you've been doing a lot of speaking on that lately.
Yeah, thank you. So when I said like I'm sorry that I just vilified a generation, like I mean it. I don't think baby boomers or traditionalists like are bad, and in fact, like I'm having to reconcile some of my initial gut behavior around people who were older and wiser than me when it came to some of these new things. And we've all sat in those meetings where you're like, you know, but why aren't any of you on Twitter? Or like, let me tell you about TikTok, and everyone's arms are crossed. And it's just like, but you don't get it. And they're like, but you don't get it. And I wasn't always right. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking about what it means to be wise, what digital wisdom means. Because when I mentioned that Vine was out for 4 years, and I'm glad I spent time on Vine even if it's gone, it's very similar to me saying, like, well, the first computer I ever had doesn't even turn on anymore, but I'm very glad I had it, right? So starting to build, so I have a keynote presentation and a workshop that we're doing around this idea of exploring your digital wisdom. What was the first computer that you ever had? What was the first cell phone you had? What was the first social networking behavior that you participated in? So for me, that would be dialing into bulletin board systems and downloading illegal music.
With the phone coupler, the suction cups.
For some people, that could be AOL Instant Messenger, right? The first emoji you ever used, right? So those three things specifically: computer, cell phone. So computer is like core technology, processing power, computing. Phone would be mobility. Social network would be interpersonal communication and interaction, and all of that's required for that. Like it's my favorite party trick. Like if I can get you to talk about those things, I can learn so much about you, and I learn a lot about me too. And that means when the new thing comes out, when TikTok comes out, and I'm up here telling you like you gotta try TikTok, that's not because it's just a new thing. That's because that's grounded in like I am wise and I have life lessons, and you have life lessons that you have earned and that you have grown and that you have, and so like let's apply that to the new thing. Let's try the new thing. And so it's been really fun, and it's this idea of like let's get away from like arms crossed about the new thing, or maybe not just like let's run straight to the new thing, but like, let's ask questions. And you see me like drop these things in of like you might not get it, but other people get it. Like why do they like it? You don't have to like it to understand why someone likes it. Like I'm sure we could all go to the MIA right now, the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and like you will each have a different gallery that you like. And my youngest son would rather just like sit on a bench and do nothing. Right? And like I'm gonna want to go to the modern art. My daughter's gonna want to go to the Renaissance paintings. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong. That just means that we like different things, but I want to know why they like those different things, right? And I think that it's really important that we as lifelong students explore that with yourself. So I would just challenge you, investigate your own biases and your own passions, and where did those come from? And then if you have kids, think about how you're showing that to other people. I went to a session at South by Southwest with Lady Gaga's mom, where she specifically works with young people to help educate them of how to use technology. She talks about how if your little toddler is running next to the deep end of a pool, you run over and grab his or her hand. But you also will just hand them a phone and be like, just shut up for an hour while I run this social media breakfast meeting.
He's playing Wizards Unite, so it's not like he's just running a
mug.
mug.
Are absolutely on screens right now. And my daughter was at the last one of these I spoke at with the screen in the back. So that was a little meaner than I meant it to be, and I'm sorry. But this idea of that we have a responsibility around technology, but also in your job, there's going to be new things. We talked about some new things today. And I think one of the most important ones is augmented reality coming to Google results search. Because if your brand has a website and if you Google your brand and something comes up, theoretically in the very near future, you're going to be able to click a button and project something as a 3D hologram in your room. That's amazing. You might not be excited about that. I am. It's going to be a thing, whether you like it or not. But there will be new things. Next year, there will be new things. And we as a community get to decide what we do with those new things and how we process those. And so I want to grow in digital wisdom, and you guys are part of that too. I send an email out every Friday. Like I said, you can go to my Twitter or my Instagram, and there's a link in a bio to sign up. I write about what's going on this week, and then try to think about how do we reconcile that and grow as we're all helping each other learn and grow and explore the social media world together.
That's a beautiful view of the world, Greg. it's inspiring too. Questions now. Raise them high, and I'll come to you.
Hi, so Facebook recently announced that they're launching cryptocurrency. So I'm really curious your opinion on how that's going to impact digital, but the global economy with getting into the game of crypto.
So Facebook just launched or has announced that they're launching a cryptocurrency called Libra. That you will be able, and they've partnered with Visa and MasterCard. They've assembled a council of old white men to give them overhead and an oversight, which is sad that that's how it has to work, but it does. And as I said, Facebook is the internet for a lot of the world in the same way that for us, when we first had America Online, remember those CD-ROMs that were in every magazine? And you would dial into America Online, and there was a whole world of America Online keyword content and website content that you could just be in America Online without ever actually getting to the web. And a lot of people didn't even understand they were different, right? So that is Facebook for a huge percentage of the world, especially the unbanked. And we are not as responsible and a little too flippant about the unbanked population in the United States, and globally, that's a very big population. Where I'm in a cash-based culture, I'm not in a bank on purpose for a variety of personal or socioeconomic reasons. So Facebook is actually very, very smart for launching a cryptocurrency because they have the breadth in the population, they have a user base that needs an ability to, via a safe and secure way, share and transfer money back and forth. However, Facebook is under Congress's eye. And, we all watched the Zuckerberg testimony, which was painful as shit, right? Why was it so painful? Well, it wasn't because I don't trust Facebook, which I kind of don't, because I don't really like Mark Zuckerberg, because I kind of don't. It was because of all the really old white men asking questions about a technology they didn't understand. Just how do you make money on Facebook? And he's like, we serve ads, Senator. And he's like, well, yeah, but how do you make money? And it's so I think that Congress and the Senate is going to have an enormous amount of scrutiny on Facebook's cryptocurrency to the point that it might just choke it off. However, so we're learning, right? We're always learning and paying attention and being students of what's going on. That means so they're really the first big brand to launch their own currency, right? So I think Burger King in Russia launched a burger coin where you and people were like paying their rent with like Burger King, and that was a joke, that was a stunt. But I think we should look for other big brands to look to getting into the currency market in a way that Facebook, again, is going to have pioneered it, but they're probably under too much scrutiny to really succeed. I could be totally wrong.
Hi, Greg. Hi, Greg. Jody on the web here. So we've been talking about Facebook a lot, so I'm going to shift the conversation a bit. So Facebook recently announced that it's shifting to groups. How are you advising your clients to authentically dip their toe into Facebook's groups?
Do any of you have branded groups in your brands? Okay, a couple of hands. So it shouldn't be early days for this, but it is. So a few years ago, 10 years ago, there was a product called Ning, N-I-N-G, which was a white label message board that you could sign up for and then put it on your website. I think Clorox Moms was run off of it, I think. So I have gregscompany.com, and you can go to gregscompany.com/forum, and there's a message board from my brand, and we built these for companies. And it was like, come and have a conversation on our page in our terms with your community.
That was the first SMB site. Was a Ning. It was a Ning community. Yeah.
For social media breakfast.
For social media breakfast.
We had our own social network, right? Our own group and place where you could subscribe. And so that behavior has always been real. And you've almost been like going around that into like conversations on a page, on a business page on Facebook. So now with the algorithm favoring groups, a page can create a group, and you can create that, and you can drive conversation and do everything you should do if you were participating in Reddit as a brand or etc. However, there's a law of diminishing returns. It's like, how much effort are you going to spend building this group and curating content and moderating it for some output? So this is where, do not give that work to your agency. Only do that in-house. Do not give that to someone who is whose time is exceedingly important. Give it to someone who's very smart and you trust, and allow them to cultivate a community. But it's really going to be up in that 1 to 2% innovation budget of your time.
Hi, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to data segmentation, personalization, and the buyer journey.
Sure. Anything specific around,
Well, I work primarily in B2B environments, and I'm wondering if the B2C that Fallon works on is doing anything to make content more relevant and personalized in light of all the data that a brand has access to.
Yeah. So a lot of times, and I'm sure there's a lot of B2B marketers in the room. So a lot of times, the B2C or the B2B2C examples are the sexiest, and they're the fun, and they're the most relevant to you personally. But B2B feels like it's left out of some of these conversations, and they're not actually. And I think B2B is really exciting because you have a smaller group of people you need to reach. So again, it's all about defining the brief. There's a really great book called The Beautiful Constraint that talks about making the boundaries really tight. So with that data, whether you're a B2C or a B2B company, that means that you can inform your content in a more relevant way, right? So that goes down from everything from, so basically it comes down to A and B testing. So color, using Facebook's deep audience insights or Google's deep audience insights, and then testing. So running multiple versions of the same creative, seeing how it performs. Thinking of using a tool like Simmons or ComScore, where you can actually load in your specific audience and then see what else they like. Not just consumer brands, but everyone. It's all of America, right? All the world. So you can see that, wow, the buyer for this product, this office manager who buys toilet paper for all of these buildings, they also really like Applebee's or Happy Hours or The Voice. And then you can use that data and those insights to craft your content and your targeting.
So Greg, hi, the one you made fun of. That's me. For the record, he's now at least walking around with his phone,
Okay.
not just sitting.
Sorry.
So lately with some of the designers I work with, we've been talking about gender design, and once people that have been targeted and segmented go past your landing page that's designed for that segment, how the rest of your site can impact that. So I'm wondering just how some of your clients are, how that's being introduced or explained to them if they don't already know it, and then how they're reacting.
What a great question. Gender is so important, and it's literally evolving right now, like how we talk about it. And that's, I mentioned earlier, like, I really struggled that my daughter watches my sons scream things at Alexa and then talk about her, and it just really bothers me. And you can change it to say computer instead, by the way.
This is why we just changed our Google voice to male.
Yeah.
Changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah. It changed because that matters, right? And I have a very, very, very good friend who's transitioning right now, and like, she does not want her dead name everywhere. And so I think your question of like, we use gender to pull you through the funnel, and then at a certain point it's like, and you're a human, like, buy my shit. It's really interesting if you're like, and I'm a different human now. I'm the same human, but I would like to be addressed differently now. And so I think that's really fascinating. What you can do, so this is like kind of fun. You can go to trackthis.com, track this. So it's a tool that Firefox has put out where it will open 100 tabs in your browser of something that's not of interest to you. So you can do streetwear, or doomsday survivalist stuff, or skateboarding, or influencer, and you push a button and it opens 100 tabs. It's like streetwear is like Supreme and Vans shoes and all that kind of stuff, right? And it really messes with your targeting. Like, it completely changes all the ads that you get served in banners in Facebook. And so I did it twice yesterday, and it like completely crashed my computer. It was wonderful. So, and it kind of goes to your data, your targeting perspective, because we know so much about people, we don't really know a lot about them. Like, if you go into your Twitter and Facebook insights, like, it can shock you that it knows kind of about how much money you make and what kind of car you drive and where you live and like what kind of like toilet paper you buy. Like, it's very strange, but it's also great if you're a marketer. Like, I want to know all of it. I want to know more, and I want those ads to be better targeted. But as a human, the reason that Mozilla made this, Firefox made this, is that they now have a browser where you can actually turn off some of that tracking, and so they're actually like flaunting it in Google Chrome's face.
Do we have questions over on this side? Great.
Thank you. So when you're looking at new and emerging technologies, what's kind of your process for determining this is either popular or impactful enough that it's going to go from I'm personally investing my time to my client's going to invest their budget in it?
Yeah, that's a really great question, right? So context. You have to figure out what your context is. And so every brand you should already have like what your brand values are and your mission, your content pillars, right? Your audiences. And like, I literally write those out as a checklist, like an innovation framework. So here's a new thing coming. Would it help us do X for these customers, and then Y? And then I love to write out what the barriers are. So if you're in financial services or healthcare, regulatory, right? Data, privacy, ethics. If you work at a company where your leadership team they don't know how to type, or they don't use social media, that could be a thing. Is cost a factor? Do you need to spend money to acquire this? So when I was at Space 150, I had a Microsoft HoloLens, which is a $3,000 helmet that projects augmented reality in the room. And it was wonderful, and I loved it. And I literally just got goosebumps because I'm such a nerd. Like, it changed my living room into a dank warehouse, and then I walked around and solved a Law and Order crime. That's what I do on the weekends. But I don't work there anymore, and I can't buy a $3,000 AR helmet, right? And nor should I. So if you can kind of come up with what does my brand care about? What are my goals for next year? What are my barriers to entry? And then what I would recommend to you is what are 3 things we want to learn this year, but don't isolate them to technology. So it could be more I want to learn why people don't recommend us later. I want to learn why someone would recommend us. I want to learn why my competitor is performing better in this area, or people believe something that's not true about us. And then as a new thing happens, you can kind of run it through that framework and be like, oh, we could hit one of our goals in this, right? So it's not a cop-out answer, but it's like your strategy is so agnostic, like it's so different between every single one of you. It's going to be so personalized that you kind of have to be agnostic when you see a new thing. Like, I'll tell you why I'm excited about it for Limerita or Arby's or Culligan, but I don't know your brand. And I think a lot of times, like, it's so overwhelming because you're not in a tribe of people who are excited about what's next. You're disincentivized to push and ask questions or invest money that doesn't deliver ROI, and we're busy. But the truth is, not actually that busy. Like, we actually spend a lot of time just like fucking around on Instagram. And that's why like I'm recommending books, like read them, right? Like make an Alexa skill, like try it. And so for me, what I'm having my team do is like set one goal a month and like learn one thing. And like Facebook Blueprint is a great place to start. So just Google Facebook Blueprint. It'll teach you what Facebook marketing is. You get to make some ads. Like they're like some of them take 5 minutes or less to do. Like you have time to learn the new thing. And a lot of times, like your tribe around you at work might not be the ones who are excited about what's next. But if you are, it's infectious and it's contagious. And like ask them, like go to happy hour and ask them what their first computer was and what their first cell phone was. And so like get to know them, and it sets like a common layer of understanding where it's not just nostalgia, it's not just storytelling. It's like it's an exciting opportunity to push and think about what's next.
Absolutely. Greg will be here for a little bit to answer more questions. And otherwise, you can hit him up on Twitter or TikTok or whatever. And let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, Greg. And I will let you go back to your meters before the storm hits, but think about coming next month on the 25th for Paul DeBeddings. It's not just for job seekers like my lovely wife right now, but for hiring and, again, people who are comfortable in their role and just looking to refresh their materials. So have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe on Skelly Video or YouTube places are hosted, and we'll see you guys Thursday next month with Paul. Happy Thursday, enjoy the storm, and happy social media breakfast.